All right, hello everybody. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm just going to take a couple seconds here, wait for a couple people to come in, and then I'm going to get set up while we're waiting, connect to the chat channels, all that good stuff. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay and there's not too much background noise. If you'll let me know if there's any kind of audio issues, I'd appreciate that. Today we're going to be covering basically how you can build more effective CloudFormation templates. And I'm just gonna update the topic really fast. So give me 1 second here. Building better CloudFormation templates. So the topic should be updated now. Can everybody see everything okay? Everything's working. I'm gonna go ahead and launch into it. I got a very disturbing notification on my side that the stream is now offline. But I think that's just the Twitch API acting up. So, so who was on the stream yesterday? Was anybody watching yesterday when we built that celebrity tweeter? Zoom some more. That's about as zoomed in as I can get for now. Sorry, Threadberry. So everybody should have seen yesterday the celebrity tweeter, and even if you didn't see it, I'll explain what it was. Essentially, it was a means of building a Twitter bot that can recognize celebrities and photos and then tweet at those celebrities. Now, we got a good portion of it done. It launched, it was running, it's doing well, but it wasn't easily consumable by other people. So we didn't have any way for other people to launch it and get going with it. So I thought what we'd do today is we'd take that same bot that we built on Tuesday, I guess, or was it Monday? It was Tuesday or Wednesday. The same bot we built on Wednesday, and we will kind of build off of that into a CloudFormation template. Now, there are a couple different ways we can do this, but I think the easiest way is going to be to start just from scratch and kind of work our way up from there. So there are a couple different ways to... Sorry, all of my notes are in Sublime Text because I don't have to save them. So there are a couple different ways to build and edit kind of CloudFormation templates. But in general, the easiest way to get started with a CloudFormation template is to go to the CloudFormation console and launch the template designer. So let's do that. So here we go. We are over in the CloudFormation console. You can see I've got a couple different CloudFormation things going on already. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Design Template. Now, there's some things that I know I'm going to need in this application, right? I know that I'm going to need a Lambda. I know that I'm going to need a Kinesis stream. I know that I'm going to need an EC2 instance. And I know I'm going to need a DynamoDB table. So those are the 4 resources that we used yesterday. So to go over the architecture from yesterday just briefly, we basically had this instance talking to this stream, which was talking to this Lambda function, which was talking to DynamoDB and also to recognition. Now, since recognition is just an API, it's almost entirely stateless. I don't really need to add anything in CloudFormation about recognition, just because it's not a stateful resource. It's kind of like a thing that I have to go out to occasionally. Threadberry, I love that you love my coding sessions. Thank you. It's very nice of you to say. That's a very kind thing to say. So you'll see that the labels that are generated from so this metadata section is just going to have all of the IDs of these different things and how to render them in this template designer. But the resources section, you'll see it's just generating kind of these random IDs, which are a little bit frustrating as a human to kind of get into. So what I normally do is I go in and I change these. So this section, the Lambda function, we're going to call this process stream function. And this section, the Kinesis stream, we're going to call this the tweet stream. And this section, the AWS EC2 instance, we're going to call this tweet stream producer. And the DynamoDB section, we're going to call celebrities table. And then we can refresh and we can see everything's still connected. And you'll see that these have kind of some depends on and other stuff set up. We don't actually need to go into any of that, but we do need to set up an IAM role. And this, in my opinion, is where the template editor starts to fall short. So you kind of, at this point, want to have an editor that can do some checking, that can do some verification on the IAM policy that you're producing. So if you like using the command line, which, you know, if you're watching the stream, hopefully that's you. And just to make this a little bit easier, I'm just going to edit my theme here really fast. Path. I'm just going to make it so the path doesn't render so that I can leave the text really big, but so that it doesn't well, now there's no. Let's try it one more time. Let's leave the prompt end on there and the prompt status on there. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to leave the prompt like this for now, just so that we can see everything and I can see the command that I'm typing. So when we build a CloudFormation template, there are a couple best practices like I was talking about earlier. This metadata section that you see up here, this is all for kind of the CloudFormation designer. These are basically, I mean, these are not useful in my opinion. So what we're going to do now is hop on over from this like template designer that we have. We can take this kind of existing template that we've gotten, and we're going to go into PyCharm and start kind of a new template. So I'm going to do, you know, touch template.yaml and then open template.yaml. Let's do charm template.yaml. And this is the text we'll start with. So the first thing to do, oh, let me switch this into YAML actually, sorry. And the reason we're going to use YAML is it's a little bit easier to kind of move around quickly with. You'll see it's shorter, it's a little bit easier to consume. So let's go ahead and start by deleting all of the existing metadata. And then all of these existing metadata properties. And So now we have some idea of what we're going to be building, but we want to add the first thing, a description. And this little caret in, pardon me for just one moment, I'm sorry. Hello? This is Joseph. I'm okay. Great, hi. I'm sorry, I'm busy until 1 p.m. So my appointment was at 1 p.m., right? Okay, if you go to the leasing office, they can get you in. Okay, thank you, bye. Sorry about that, guys. So, if you go into the description section, there's a whole lot of stuff that you should add. So the first thing that you should always add is a warning, and I try and put this as bold as possible. This template creates resources that can cost you money. Yes, I'm having a series of things done to the apartment later today. We're getting fiber optic internet all over the building, so I have an appointment at 1 p.m. to kind of bring all that in, and we also have fire alarm testing later today, so it's a little bit difficult to organize everything. Okay, cool. So I always add that general disclaimer to any CloudFormation template that I make, because I want to make sure that when somebody suddenly gets a credit card charge for $6 6 months from now, they didn't just click through this. They know what it is, and if you put it big and bold like this, it'll be obvious to them, hopefully. Okay, so warning: this template creates resources that can cost you money, and then you will be billed for the AWS resources used if you create a stack from this template. And that little caret, the greater than sign that you see in the description, it's just a YAML functionality that preserves line breaks. Now, CloudFormation itself doesn't actually preserve line breaks in the description, so the reason I do this is that one day I hope CloudFormation will preserve line breaks, and it will allow me to kind of understand better what's happening. So after we put that warning, the general disclaimer, we say what does the template do? And that's just, this template will launch an Amazon, launch an, you guys can't see this, can you? It's a little too small. Let me make it bigger. Amazon recognition powered image celebrity recognition robot, Twitter bot. Cool. Now we say what it will create. It will create a DynamoDB table storing the celebrity Twitter handles, a Lambda function storing, or function to identify celebrities, and EC2 instance to, and you basically just kind of go over and iterate what each of the different things is going to do. An EC2 instance that identifies, or that consumes Twitter's user stream, and a kinesis stream that does what? A Kinesis stream that, I guess it just sort of is a buffer for the Twitter stream. So, and the other advantage of building this description is that it makes you actually think about the architecture that you're throwing in here and verbalize it. And when you verbalize it, sometimes you realize, I don't have a great reason for using this. Why am I doing this? So the Kinesis stream with a single shard that consumes the Twitter stream and allows Lambda functions to execute on events in the stream. So that's how we could describe it. Okay, now the metadata section. And the thing with the metadata section is it's not really useful until you have parameters. And the parameters that we need in this are really just our API credentials. So let's go ahead and start a parameter section. And we'll just say we need a consumer key, we need a consumer secret, we need an access token key, and we need an access token secret. Now, if I were to do this just now, and I'll show you what it looks like right now, we'll go ahead and launch this just because I know that you guys watching me type for an extended period of time is like one of the most boring things in the world. So we'll go ahead and launch this and see how far along we get. I'm pretty sure it'll throw up some errors about missing required properties or something. Get rid of this metadata section. Okay, so we're going to copy this. We're going to go over into our template. And we can refresh and it'll say, okay, you've got these things. And then we can click this button in the top left that says validate. Did it say it was valid? Well, that's impressive. So then I'll launch this. And I can launch just by clicking the button next to validate. And I'll go in and you'll see I've got a stack name. And then I have kind of this access token key, this access token secret. The consumer key, I spelled consumer wrong though. That's a good thing to fix. Consumer key. Consumer key. So the issue with these parameters is that we don't have the right order. These are not human-friendly names, and they're not even really kind of like if I type here, you can see everything I'm typing here. Whereas really, those values are going to be echoed out every time we look at the stream, every time we look at the CloudWatch events. And the issue with that is that we are not supposed to be exposing these credentials. So what we want to do is, and this is a good practice for any kind of credential that you're trying to put into CloudFormation, is to say no echo is true. And the really best way of doing this is to have a completely separate credential management system where you have API calls that are setting up all of this stuff. So we'll set no echo equals true, and that basically turns these into password fields. And then the other thing that we can do is we can go over into this metadata section and we can start doing some additional configuration. So we can say AWS CloudFormation interface parameter groups, and we can just add a label here that says default, and what do we want to call this? We'll say Twitter configuration. And then we'll add the parameters for that group. And here we can just put in consumer key, consumer secret, access token key, access token secret. And we can also go in and put labels on each of those items. So we can go and create a parameters labels section, parameters labels. But before I do that, let's just go to this one and see what it looks like. So we can validate again. We can click launch. And now you'll see we have this section, this Twitter configuration section, where we have the consumer key, the consumer secret, and the other stuff. Now, this isn't actually that great because it's not the same terms that Twitter uses to refer to their stuff. And also I repeated access token key. So what we can do is we can actually add in labels on all of this. So we can say parameter, spelling is so hard, parameter labels. And then we can say, we can just give the label name, consumer key, and then we say default is going to be consumer key API key. And that's the way that Twitter refers to it. And then we can say consumer secret, and that's going to be consumer secret API secret. And it's not like CloudFormation is a fun, sexy thing to be working on, but it's super useful for people who are going to consume your content after the fact. So if you're building a blog post, or if you're building something that is intended for consumption by other people, I think CloudFormation, in taking these 10 extra minutes to make something a little bit easier to consume, is totally worth it. Access token secret, it's going to be default. Access token secret. And now if we launch this again, you'll see that our parameters look a little bit more human. So it's got spaces, it's got this Twitter configuration section, and it's also hiding what we type. So we know that it's not going to take any bad stuff. And if we provision this, it won't work, just because I'm missing a bunch of properties on various things. But we'll go ahead and click provision just to see what happens. So it immediately told me that I was missing certain required properties. And this is something that I know that the CloudFormation team is working hard on addressing, is building kind of better validation. Kind of doing better validation than what they currently do. So let's see. We can delete the stack because the rollback didn't work. Or I mean, the rollback worked fine, but the provisioning didn't work. And then we can go and we can sort of address what the required templates are. So the good news is in PyCharm, they have a CloudFormation editor, and it will tell you what properties are kind of required. So the first thing that we need in our Kinesis stream is kind of a shard count. Let me see here. And I don't think we really need anything beyond that, but we have a shard count. let's see, we've got, oh no, this is our Lambda function, sorry. So in the Kinesis stream, I don't actually like having quotes around these function names, or these function types. Seems overly zealous to me. I like having quotes around the things that are actually strings that are presented to the user, but beyond that, I don't. So this is our tweet stream, and then this is our Lambda function. And let's see, the Lambda function is going to be kind of, oh, there's one other thing that we have to build actually, which is going to be our SSM and SSM Parameter Store for the API credentials. So this one is actually really fun to build, and this is a best practice that isn't recommended by anybody but me right now, but that's because I think it's fairly new. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this kind of API keys section, and it's going to be of type AWS SSM parameter properties. Hello, IT Security TV, what's up? And what we'll do is we'll actually create our own parameter from the parameters that we put in. We'll create our own credential from the parameters that we put into the CloudFormation template. So we'll say this is of type string list, value is going to be sub, and this is using an intrinsic CloudFormation function. And all the sub does is it says, hey, replace everything that's in this $, open bracket, close bracket section with the actual value. Consumer key, consumer secret, this is going to be access token key and access token secret. So those are our credentials. Now, the next thing that we need to do is create, I guess, kind of our DynamoDB table. And I'll do this, I'll do this right up top. And this is going to be really easy. We'll just say attribute definitions is going to be attribute name, and we'll call it ID, and it'll be of type string. Attribute type is going to be string, and then we'll say key schema. Pardon me. With wait. Sorry, I am just a little bit off here. Attribute name is going to be ID, and the key schema, key type is hash. Whoops. Key type hash. So that should get our DynamoDB table working. The next thing that we got to look into is our EC2 instance. Actually, we should probably do the Lambda function first. The problem with doing the Lambda function is to get this working quickly, we're going to need to throw on a bunch of roles that we don't really want to throw on. They're not the ideal roles. So there's one other thing that we can do here in the DynamoDB section, which is the provision throughput. And you'll notice that PyCharm has that kind of, it has, you guys see that far down? Let me move it up a little bit. PyCharm has this kind of autocomplete for me from their CloudFormation function. Okay, IT Security TV, which your question is, I work on AWS. We moved recently from 2 physical data centers to fully on AWS. and functions are great in AWS. We're in security outside of Google, so it's PowerShell. So your question is, why would you need to do anything with CloudFormation? So CloudFormation, I like to think of it as a bootstrapping tool. I don't like to think of it as a continuous configuration management tool. A continuous configuration management tool is something like Chef, or even something like Puppet or Ansible or SaltStack, which is what you're using right now. One thing that you might want to look into that might make it easier to manage both your Windows instances and your Linux instances is something called SSM, Simple Systems Manager. So SSM has an agent that it runs on your machine, and I'll show you what this agent looks like. AWS. This agent is written in Go. You do use it. Okay, cool. So using SSM, I think you can accomplish just about anything that you need for ongoing maintenance of your instances. CloudFormation is more about how to bootstrap. So let's assume for a moment that your AWS account was compromised and you no longer had access to it, but you had to go out and kind of reboot the entire company. Could you do that in a few minutes, or would you have to manually spin up a bunch of different instances and maintain all of the architecture and everything? And the advantage of CloudFormation is that you can keep the entirety of the company's important business operations continuity of operations stuff in a template that is managed like code. So I can keep my networking information, my auto scaling groups, all of that other stuff in CloudFormation. But it's just a bootstrapping step. It doesn't really do a ton of ongoing configuration maintenance and management, where something like Chef or Puppet that has kind of those checks to see if things are still in configuration, that is more useful for reducing heterogeneity within your cluster. It makes your cluster of machines easier to consume. So that's a really good question. Keep them coming. So I'm just going to add some read capacity units to this DynamoDB table. We'll say, and some write capacity units. Okay, now let's get into the Lambda function, because that's going to be the interesting part. And we wrote the code yesterday, so I uploaded that code to an S3 bucket. But if we want to make this work in multiple regions, Lambda functions can only read from the region that they're in. So they can't read from S3 buckets in other regions. I mean, they can once you're in the function, but they can't load code using CloudFormation or even SAM from a bucket that's not in its own region. So that's a bit of an issue, because it means we have to create a bucket in every single region that we want to be able to launch this. Now, right now, recognition is only available in 3 different regions. So it's not that hard to create 3 different buckets, 3 different templates, 3 different, what are they called? 3 different zip files. But it's a little bit cumbersome, and I am looking forward to the day where we have kind of a better story around application deployment around that particular section. So let's go ahead and just assume we're going to be running in US East 1 today. Let me kind of go ahead and say we're going to have a handler, and that handler is going to be process stream.lambda handler. And that's just based on the code that we wrote yesterday. So if we go back here and we look at process stream, this is all the code that we wrote on Wednesday. And this is, Lambda handler is, where we are expecting our event in context, and the name of the file is process stream. So that's why we get this process stream Lambda handler bit. We're going to have a runtime, and that's going to be Python 2.7. But I don't exactly remember what that runtime is supposed to look like. It might be Python 2.7 without the dash. I can never remember this. And this is why it's really important to have some better validation. And then the code is going to be in an S3 bucket and an S3 key. And I don't remember what these are right now, so we'll do a little bit of checking later and I'll fill this out. So I'm just going to leave a little note to do. And let's see, we've got memory size is going to be, we'll say 1024 for now. It's way more than we actually need, but I like over provisioning and then kind of going down based on the CloudFormation or CloudWatch metrics that I get. Everything starts with cloud. It's hard sometimes to remember everything. And then the role part is the frustrating part, because the role, we have to decide if we're going to go ahead now and build kind of the least privilege access role, or if we're going to go and cheat a little bit. And I think for now, just to get started, we can cheat a little bit. But if you ever take this into production, you're asking your customers who are consuming this template, you're asking too much of them unless you build that IAM role, which is the least, the role with the least access. So it's important, I think, to kind of recognize what you're asking of your customers when you give Lambda kind of like admin access or something. And then we're going to say tracing config mode is active, and that's just saying I want you to run X-ray on all of this. And then we're going to set a few environment variables. And those are just going to be the SSM parameter name, which is going to be ref API keys, and the DynamoDB table that we created earlier. We're going to say DDP table is equal to ref tweets table. So let's see. We have our Kinesis stream. We have our Lambda function, we have our celebrities table, and we have our API keys. The only thing that we have left to get is this tweet producer, this EC2 instance. Now, when you're creating things that you expect to be consumed by a large audience with a vast array of different AWS account types, it's important to understand that how many of you created your EC2 accounts before 2015? Everybody should chat. Everybody should tell me, what year did you create your EC2 account? Before 2015? Okay, so Kinso Dev created hers before 2015. A bunch of people raising their hands saying that they created theirs before 2015. 2009. Okay, 2013. So those of you who created them before a certain date, you probably still have access to EC2 Classic resources and accounts and stuff like that. And how many people have been dealing with the kind of transition into VPC? I know that I've been dealing with it. And the issue around that is when I create, this template is great, but when I give it to somebody, if they have an older account, it's not going to work. And it's because they don't have the default VPC set up in each region. So depending on the subset of customers that you want to address, it's really important actually to go further than what we have here, because this is nice. This is 100 lines, right? And this does pretty much everything that we need it to do. But to get from this 90% to that 100% is a little bit more work. So let's talk. Well, there's actually one more thing that we need to make all this work, which is going to be our tweet stream Lambda mapping. And that's just going to say like, hey, take this event source mapping. Take this event source arm, get at tweet stream dot harm and function name ref process stream Lambda. Starting position is going to be trim horizon, and that just says give me everything I haven't seen yet. So iCanagal asks, to what extent do present-day tools like Troposphere, which generate CloudFormation templates, would be efficient? Are there going to be new tools that can help us in this? Threadberry, PyCharm has it through a plugin. So you can get, the question was, how does PyCharm have autocomplete for CloudFormation? If you go to plugins, you can search for this CloudFormation plugin. It works really, really well. I don't know who made it. I guess this Leonid Shalupov made it, and it's really, really good, and we should give that person props because it's saved me a lot of time. So to answer iCanagal's question, are there going to be new tools to help us with this? I think there are a lot of tools out there already. Troposphere, which is a Python framework for building both IAM policies and CloudFormation templates, is pretty good already. But Troposphere also doesn't have an underlying understanding of the resources or of the models. And then Terraform, KinsoDev brings up Terraform, and Terraform is really good too. I've seen Terraform used in a lot of places. The issue with Terraform is that they haven't, HashiCorp is amazing. Like 90% of the things that they build are vital to my day-to-day workflow. But they're being based on JRuby and the Ruby gem fog for the construction of AWS resources means that they're always lagging behind because it's not based on the programmatic models of like something like Boto Core is. And it's also not, it's not really, if you go look at the repo, let's take a look at the repo. And I'm not trying to like say that Terraform is bad. It's not bad. So we go into plugins. Has Terraform always been 100% Go? I remember it being Ruby for a long time. What am I thinking of here? Vagrant is Ruby. Huh. So how do they do their, how does Terraform do their provisioning? Okay, this is what I mean. This is getting Chef going. I remember plugins for Terraform being just insane. So maybe I need to look at Terraform again. The other issue is there are some issues in Terraform that have been open for years and years and years, and they still haven't been fixed. Vagrant is also has issues. So KinsoDev, I would actually disagree that it's much better. So again, I haven't used Terraform in more than a year, so I'm not an expert on it, obviously. But there are a lot of things that Terraform does that I used to have issues with. So I remember kind of like provisioning IAM roles and things like this, and I would have to kind of wait around for it to work, and I would have to add manual sleeps in places before I could move on and do other stuff. And then CW program mentions that Troposphere does some validation of parameters for different resources, and also that I could do S3 cross-region replication to handle Lambda in other regions. The cross-region replication, what exactly do you mean by that? So we'd still have to have a separate named bucket for the different regions, which is going to cause us to build out our own parameter store. So I'm not sure that cross-region replication solves it for us. Just because we would need the different buckets still. Okie dokie. So I'm going to take more look at Terraform later today. Let's get back on track real quick here. I'm going to take kind of an existing template and we'll work from that one. So this is the one that we used the other day. Oops. So CW program, I think the issue with automating Lambda into other regions, like you're saying, is that we don't actually have any. So to do cross-region replication, you still have to create another bucket to replicate to, and at that point, we've already done the one step that CloudFormation couldn't do on its own for multiple regions. And I mean, CloudFormation could do that, obviously. And that's one of the other advantages of Terraform, I guess, is that it makes managing multi-region stuff a little bit easier. Whereas CloudFormation is somewhat restricted in its ability to do all that. So I'd be hesitant to rely on just cross-region replication to deal with the kind of Lambda side, because all we need to do is get that one piece of code into 3 different regions, and setting up all of the cross-region replication stuff into multiple different buckets. I think it's easier to just do by hand than it is to kind of set up that pipeline. But I'd be interested in seeing, if you want to tweet at me, you know, what you guys use cross-region replication for. I'd be interested in seeing that. Okay, so I'm going to take everything we've built here, and as I said earlier, if you want to make this run on older accounts, you have this issue of you're going to have to create a VPC, an internet gateway, a subnet, and an auto-scaling group, and all of this other stuff for the people who are going to be running your stuff. So in this case, I'm just going to go over all the different things that we built. So right now, recognition is only available in US East 1, US West 2, and EU West 1. So I only have these AMIs that I've added into this region mapping. And this is another thing that I would love to see the CloudFormation team solve is I feel like these region AMI maps, those are kind of old school. It would be really great if we had some concept of like GAMI dash something, 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 and that would just render to the correct one based on the region you were in. So one second, I'm gonna help out somebody who has a quick question. Cool. And then could an SNS FIFO SQS help rather than S3 cross-region replication? No, I mean, the issue isn't that the whole cross-region replication thing isn't a problem we have to solve for this particular use case. This isn't data. This is just the ability to spin up the program from the start. Okay, so the next thing we do is we create a VPC, and we add a tag to this VPC, which is just the AWS stack name. we, give it a 10.0.0.16 CIDR block. We could even make this a parameter. So CW program says, I wonder if you could have a Python Lambda that uses some kind of reflection to copy itself to other regions. That would be meta. So there's this framework called Zappa that does exactly that. It's really, really interesting. It actually builds its own versions. So if you use something like CodeStar and Lambda functions, it will set up a whole pipeline for you. And that pipeline, the portion of the code build, it actually goes out, builds a Lambda zip, sends it off to a Lambda function that makes sure everything runs. Then it goes and puts that Lambda, using the Lambda, into Lambda. It's little Lambda on Lambda on Lambda on Lambda. It's a little interesting. So next we create our internet gateway. We create the attachment of the internet gateway. We create the route table. We create various routes. And then we just provision 2 different subnets. Kinso Dev says, oh shit, you're part of AWS. Yes, I do. No, you're all good. You're all good. You say whatever you want. Say whatever you want. Please do not feel that you have to censor yourself in front of me. I think Terraform is pretty awesome. I've just had issues with it. So we used Terraform for a while at SpaceX when I was there, and we also used Vagrant. And Vagrant was a nightmare all the time. Dealing with kind of JRuby left me some scars. But Terraform, I remember having issues with that too, but I'm struggling to remember what the issues were. I think it was around like provisioning an IAM role, and then that role not actually being ready by the time we needed to access it. So, but again, I could be misremembering. I'll have to go back and look because I wrote notes about all of it. So when we look into the subnet stuff, you'll know that US East 1 has like 5 different availability zones, but for these purposes, all I really need is just 2 AZs, because I'm just going to build an auto-scaling group that has a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 1. And the only reason I'm doing that is just so that it'll auto reboot into whatever AZ if we have a single AZ outage for my tweet producer. So here I'm creating this giant CIDR block for this template. I don't really need this because I'm only gonna have 1 instance in it, but I did it, so we'll leave it as it is for now. And then we create this route table association, and we create this subnet route table association. And then this is where CloudFormation has another kind of big missing point for me. And this is actually a problem with so CW program says the only thing that gets me sometimes with CloudFormation is the lack of a lot of types. There are dynamic types for VPC IDs and whatnot, but with some you end up with comma separated strings for multi-values. Yeah, that's kind of an issue that gets to me with CloudFormation too. There's this whole kind of frustrating component of CloudFormation with regard to IPv6 right now, but it's actually not really, in my opinion, the fault of CloudFormation. It's more of the APIs that we have around IPv6 that's right. It's more of the APIs that we have around IPv6 make it hard to provision and attach IPv6 routes and tables to the various subnets. So because the IPv6 block that you get from AWS is Amazon provided, so it's not like this. If I go here to where is this? If I go here I'm setting the CIDR block here. I'm saying the addresses that I want. I'm saying, hey, I want this 10.0.0./16 block, which is 65,000 addresses. And then I'm able to say in the CIDR block, hey, I want the /24, which is 255 addresses. Is that right? What's 32 minus 24 plus? is 8, so 2 to the 8th. Yeah, 255 addresses. Wow, I'm terrible at math. Whereas if it's an Amazon provided CIDR block, I have to do something like, you know, split on the colon and then, you know, join, and you know, it's awful. I don't want to deal with that. And it's kind of based on the APIs that we have available in EC2 right now. And the fact that CloudFormation has to resolve the dependency graph, and it can't do things after the fact, because you want those routes to be available when you first spin up the instance or when you first provision everything. It kind of has to be done all at once. And maybe that's something that Terraform solves better. I haven't looked into it. But I'd be interested, because the IPv6 stuff has been killing me lately. Okay, let's keep going. So then we just associate those route tables that we made up here with the route table that we made here, which just says, hey, route all the traffic through the internet gateway. We associate that with each of these subnets. And the subnets will each be in a different AZ. I'm selecting, you know, the first one here, the second one there. And this get AZs thing, from my investigations, it always returns within one template the same order. And then Threadberry asks, what's the best way to learn the flow of the AWS APIs? The flow. Well, I wouldn't say there is a flow. So Amazon has this kind of idea of you know, 2 pizza teams, which you've probably read about before or heard of before. And so a lot of these APIs, there's a standard that we follow when we're designing them and building them, but the implementation and depends on and like graph of how they have to work isn't well determined. So for instance, DynamoDB has a completely different API than EC2, because DynamoDB is a completely different resource type than EC2. RDS has a completely different resource type than SSM. So the APIs are all pretty different. They follow some standards. So there's some common nouns, there's some common verbs. Describe and get are 2 really common verbs that you use. Put is another common verb. Item or key, things like that. But all in all, they're pretty powerful. Okay, so let's go over the role that we're creating here. And this is one of the best practices that I would really like for everybody to take away from this stream, which is, if you're making a CloudFormation template that is intended for public consumption, make sure that you are creating security groups and IAM roles that have the least amount of access possible. So to that end, we are allowing EC2 and Lambda to assume this role that we've created. We are saying you have access only to this DynamoDB table, only to this SSM parameter, and you can call describe parameters and get parameters. We are allowing it to log, and we are allowing it to put trace segments. Now, this section is the DynamoDB section, and we're saying, hey, I want you to grab the ARN of that tweets table that I made earlier, and you can do all of the following actions, which is delete, get, update, put, query, scan, batch write, batch get, describe the stream, list the streams, and get shard iterators and get records. And that's in case at some point we want to go from just using DynamoDB to using the stream. And then on the Kinesis side, we say you can do any action you want on the tweet stream ARN, put record, get shard iterator, get records, describe stream, list streams. And then on recognition, you can call out to anything. Now, in this case, we can actually restrict it further, and we can say, hey, I only want you to be able to call to recognize celebrities, because I don't want them to have the ability, if they're somehow able to compromise my function, to put stuff in to my recognition tables or delete my recognition tables. But for now, you can just leave it because the function is sound. We don't even really take any user input. But that'll give you some idea of how to build these things. And then the other thing that you have to do if you want to attach that to an instance is use this stream listener profile to kind of call out to people, to kind of build a profile that can be assumed by an instance, because the IAM role needs to have an EC2 profile. And then CW program says it's especially important if EC2 needs to talk to other AWS services. Instead of storing access keys on the server, you just apply a role to the instance. On the back end, what happens is the CLI SDK calls the EC2 metadata server to get temporary credentials that expire after some time. And that is exactly right. So I recently had a customer who had this kind of interesting issue. Has anybody taken the AWS Advanced Networking exam? So this is one of the questions in that question bank, and I'm not going to give you like the whole question or anything, but the customer had an issue where they routed all of their internet traffic through a proxy server, and that proxy server had a set of whitelists, and one of the IP addresses was the metadata server. So they were trying to call out to the metadata server in order to get the IAM credentials to access other AWS resources. And the kind of unfortunate portion of that is that they had blocked the metadata server. So they weren't able to get their own IAM credentials. So even though the instance had been provisioned, it had access, it had the IAM profile on there, it had the keys and everything that were on there, it still couldn't access any AWS resources, and they could not figure out why, and they were trying everything. And then finally, we found out about this kind of proxy server that was blocking access to the metadata server, and we were like, hey, why don't you whitelist the metadata server? And then everything started working. So, funny little story there. Okay, so now we're going to build a launch config, and the launch config is really simple. It basically takes all of the same properties that the EC2 server takes, or that the EC2 instance takes, and we say, hey, find me an image map or an image ID. I'm going to go with the T2 micro. I want you to use this instance profile that I just created, and then this script is really, really simple. It's just downloading the X-ray RPM. It's installing the X-ray RPM. Pardon me, sorry. And then I'm installing Python Twitter, Boto3, requests, and Fleece. And then I'm assuming EC2 user. I'm downloading this stream.py. And then I'm calling out to install Node.js and installing forever. And then I just say, hey, run forever Python stream.py. And then the final thing that I do, and this is kind of important, is I tell the CloudFormation template to not be done until I send it a signal. So if you go here, you can see in this creation policy section of the auto scaling group that I have something called a resource signal. And I have a timeout of 15 minutes on that resource signal. And I say, hey, you're not done until this resource signal gets hit. So that's what this /opt AWS bin CFN signal kind of does, is it lets me take the error code from this whole, run this thing, and it'll say, call out to this region with this stack name and this resource name. And this resource name is the one that we have here. And tell me that it's done only when you're done executing all of this. And that means that this process stream Lambda, I can add in a depends on the stream listener ASG, so that it doesn't get created until that's done. So Plump Nuggets asks, what language is this? And this is basically, I need tissues or something. Sorry, I'm coming down with a mild cold. So building better CloudFormation templates. So this is a YAML. That's what the languages, and it's basically just saying, hey, I want some AWS resources. So let's copy this and let's see what it looks like in the designer. So we'll go back to design template. If only YAML were Python. So there's this really great framework called Troposphere that you can use to write your CloudFormation templates in Python. And do I do C# at all? Not really, no. If I can help it, I try and avoid C#. And it's not that I think C# is bad, it's just I don't like the heaviness of the core IDEs. Although Visual Studio or Visual Code or whatever their new IDE is actually amazing. I forgot what it's called, but that new Microsoft IDE, I don't know if you guys have tried it out yet. I just tried it out the other day, and I was very impressed at how kind of full featured it is. They know how to build an IDE. Okay, so this is all of our infrastructure. So let's see, we have this big old VPC here. We've got a route table. We've got an internet gateway. We've got a couple different subnets. Visual Studio Code. Yeah, I was very impressed with that IDE. I thought it was good. It was like really wicked fast and all that other stuff. But it's been a while since I tried it, so. So then we have our tweet stream mapping. We got all of our other stuff. We've got our auto scaling group. I kind of think the auto scaling group should actually be inside of the VPC. Pardon me. Auto scaling group is talking to both subnets. We've got our API keys. We've got our launch configuration. So the launch configuration is kind of off over here. And it uses the stream listener profile, which uses this Twitter Kinesis stream. All in all, I think we're kind of good to go. So we can launch this. Let's see if this shindig works. I'm actually going to do this in US West too. So let's go back for a second and kind of edit this again. So let's see here. I'm going to call this US West 2. Process stream.zip, and then I'm going to say Twitter celeb bot US West 2. Copy that on over. It's 12 megabytes. That's pretty big. Pardon me for yawning so much. Okay, and we're gonna call this celebrity recognition bot. And is AWS Ninja a Twitter bot? AWS Ninja is a Twitter bot. So let me just go over into apps.twitter. And I'll copy over these credentials real quick. Credential number 1, credential number 2, credential number 3. And the other advantage of using that metadata section to declare what order you want your credentials to be in is that I can now just copy and paste this from Twitter very easily, whereas previously I was having to actually read what the side was, but now they're in the same order that Twitter presents them to me. And I'm sure this will fail to provision the first time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set rollback on failure to no, just so I have a moment to go in and investigate. And we can go ahead and start letting this build, and we'll see how far along it gets. And if you guys are interested in provisioning that AWS Ninja CloudBot, you can go there. So I actually turned building that robot into a workshop, and you can provision it. You can do it all yourself. The exercises section is the really fun part. So if you scroll down to the very bottom, there's a section called additional exercises, because the actual workshop itself takes maybe 40 minutes. And I don't think it's Disoc asks, what's my opinion of using AWS Lambda with Java? I think it's great. The Java functions, let's see, the maximum number of VPCs has been reached. That's because I'm in the wrong region. Let's try this again with feeling. So I'm just going to copy paste this template again. There are better ways. There are better, means of doing this. I just like this way. So Disoc asks, what about using the JVM on AWS or on Lambda? And I write a bunch of Lambda functions in Java. So the advantage of Java actually is that being kind of strongly typed, you have the ability to take the event that's incoming and I can do really a lot of stuff really quickly. The only downside is that when you have to include additional jars and other libraries, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Just gonna copy all this stuff over again. Recog Twitter bot. We'll provision this. Oh, let me go back and turn rollback off. And I acknowledge that this will create IAM resources, and I'll go into create. And then while this is creating, I'm going to go and clean up what we just built. And CW program says, can I just use my AWS food to raise my own limits? I can, but I haven't. What I really need to do is just delete all of the old cruft from my console. So now we basically just wait. But if you want to write closure, so Disoc, I think that the closure issue that you're finding on Lambda with the startup time is probably cold start time rather than this is the wrong region. Sorry. Rather than an issue with the JVM itself. CloudFormation. And basically, once this is provisioned, I'm probably going to hop off the stream, but you guys are welcome to use all the code that we wrote today to build your own things. Ooh, it is Friday. I'm excited about that. Oh no. Okay, so now we have to remove this bucket, AWS S3 RB. Force oh, I've got too many slashes. Okay, so now we need to remake this bucket. Region US West 2. Did somebody just, on the stream, did somebody just try and create this bucket already? Unable to delete all. Conflicting resource. So somebody's already... I can't follow the chat. I don't even know what you guys are talking about anymore. Sorry. Celeb. Great. So I guess I have to delete this CloudFormation template. Is Plump Nugget somebody named Tyler Brock? Oh, so we have to delete all of this. So this is what I was talking about earlier with the Lambda functions that are not able to be in... Lambda functions are not able to call get object from outside of their own region for getting their code. So we have to wait for this to delete, I think, and then we can build that bucket. Shouldn't take too much longer. There we go. So okay, I'm just gonna rename this to Celeb. And I'll change it in this to be Celeb as well. And then we'll say let's see, AWS S3 make bucket recogs lab something. So now I need to do AWS S3 CP process stream. And I don't even know if I can say your name. Holy Fook. Sorry. It's a great name. So you prefer to use just JSON for CloudFormation instead of something like HashiCorp Terraform. Pros, cons of that tool. I use YAML in CloudFormation because the JSON is awful. Instead of something like Terraform. So I think HashiCorp builds really cool stuff. We covered this a little bit earlier in the stream. The issue is primarily that I, in the past, have been burned with Terraform. I've had to add like manual sleeps into my programs to wait on IAM roles to be provisioned or to wait for other resources to be provisioned. And I've had issues resolving dependencies. That said, I should take another look at Terraform now. And also its dependency on... well, this was a problem with Vagrant, actually, not a problem with Terraform. So, I don't know. I think that Terraform probably has a lot of advantages. The disadvantage is that, you know, you have to run it. Like, you have to have a place to be able to run your Terraform scripts, whereas CloudFormation is just kind of run by AWS for you. Got to go back to the Twitter page. Try this one more time. And if this one doesn't work, I am going to have to head out just because I am getting fiber optic internet installed today and there's a fire alarm test starting shortly. And I'm sure none of you guys want to hear that. So let's just see if our CloudFormation template works now. And this is the iterative portion of CloudFormation development that I absolutely hate. And you have to do this with Terraform too, actually, is, you know, hello, recog, Twitter, celeb bot. And then I'm gonna leave roll back on just because I don't want to have to deal with it again. Alrighty, let's see how we do here. Who thinks it'll actually work this time? I'm not confident, honestly. Does anybody have any questions before I go? Because I am going to hop off in about 7 minutes. So any other kind of questions you have about CloudFormation or about any of this stuff, now is the time to kind of get those questions out. Why? Obsessively refreshing this page. You don't actually have to refresh. It will show you new events as they come in, but I'm impatient. I'm so sleepy. CW program mentions another important note is that it can take a decent amount of time for new AWS products and features to get into CloudFormation. Yeah, that's true. It is true. And that's unfortunate. But Terraform suffers from the same issues, as does Vagrant, as does almost everything. This is the way that I like to think about it. The teams at Amazon are creating stuff really, really fast all the time. And the CloudFormation team has to keep up not only with the features that they add to their own service, but also the features that are added to every other service all the time. And it's a gargantuan task. It's very, very difficult. But I do think that we could do better. I'm not trying to make an excuse. I really believe that we could kind of hustle and have more CloudFormation support at launch. There are tons of businesses that depend entirely on CloudFormation, so I would I would love it if we had more in that vein. And I'm going to work really, really hard to make sure that we can start doing a little bit better. I am a Digia says, I feel better watching an AWS employee struggle with the UI/settings. Phew. And then Holy, I'm just gonna call you Holly from now on, because I'm not sure if I should say your second part of your name. Holly, I think that the next stream is gonna be next Monday, and that'll be with Slack, and we'll be building a Slack bot using Amazon Lex. And we'll have a guest from Slack. They'll be joining the stream. And then on July 6th, I'll be doing a stream. And if anybody is in London, I'll be in London at the AWS Summit. You're more than welcome to come hang out. We can grab a beer. I'll be talking about X-ray there with a company called Skyscanner. They build really cool stuff. Obsessively refreshing. So this is what 90% of iterative CloudFormation development is. It's just kind of obsessively going over this section. One thing that I recommend is when you're doing this kind of iterative development, comment out all the stuff that you don't need that takes time to provision, which is typically like the internet gateways and the EC2 instances, and get individual subcomponents of it working first, and then kind of come back to your other section. And I am Digia. The most annoying little UI quirk that I know of right now is on the Lex console. So there's this little selector in the top left, and you have to select on latest in order to be able to edit the intents that you've created. And I always forget that, and it drives me insane. I'll be trying to click on something and I can't get it to go into edit mode, and then I go up to the top and I click latest and it's fine. But that's the most annoying UI quirk that I know of right now. But I think there's a reason behind that. And it's to prevent people from mistakenly editing their intents. Editing. Yes, the AWS console is huge. I mean, look at all of this stuff. There's a whole lot of things, and each one of these has its own whole. The EC2 console in itself could be an entire company. Like, there's amazing stuff happening, and then the code build itself, or CodeStar itself, could be an entire. X-Ray could be an entire company. So it's like you have 70 different companies kind of available to you here, and it's a lot of stuff to learn. So I've recently gotten all 7 of the AWS certifications, which is easy, I guess, because I'm an employee and I should be able to get all 7. But I have to say that networking exam that they had was one of the hardest exams I've ever taken. So I think in order of difficulty, it goes AWS networking exam specialty, the pro cert for solutions architecture, the big data advanced cert, and then all the other ones are pretty easy. So like all the associate exams are super easy. Most of the professional exams are easy. The professional developer one, or if it's SysOps, I don't remember. Those are both pretty easy. But the professional solutions architect one is kind of, it's just very broad, and the questions are annoyingly long. They're like 3 paragraphs long on every single question, and you have 70 of them. And I just don't want to answer 3 paragraph questions. Okay, so we can test this. We can tweet out an image of a celebrity. So we did this yesterday. So we can say, hey, I am Digia. It's not a paragraph. It's 3 paragraphs. Each question is 3 paragraphs. Oh, wow. Yeah, Eric Hammond. That is a cool little project. Eric, how did you produce this little ASCII Cinema thing? Okay, I see. That's cool. So, I mean, we did this yesterday, and now we've got the CloudFormation stuff going. I think it should be working. If it doesn't work, then I've got to go anyway, but we'll try it. Is this celebrity? Which celebrity should we try and recognize? Anybody have a suggestion for a celebrity that we should try and recognize? I'm gonna go with Andy Jassy. So this is Andy Jassy. We'll see if our little Twitter bot works. It should respond. The first response always takes a little while. Did imdb.com just like not render? Am I dropping frames here? Okay, it looks like I didn't get a response. So that means our Lambda function isn't working. And I'm sure it's just some sort of quirk. imdb.com. IMBD. Oh, I had it. I promise 90% of the errors that we hit on this stream are spelling errors. All right, let's take a quick look, see why this isn't working. Triggers, problem function called vlogs and CloudWatch. If it's something simple, we can fix it right away. Is not authorized to perform get item on table celebrity handler. Oh. Here, I can fix this really fast. I know what this issue is. It's because come on. It's because I hard coded the table name from last time. Oops. So don't hard code table names, and you could change this Lambda function through update stack or something if you wanted to, but it's a lot easier to just re-upload the it's a lot easier to just re-upload all of this. Yeah, don't hard code things. That's my advice. And now it should work. Or at least it should have a different error. So we can test it again. We can generate a new event. Should we use Zac Efron this time? No, don't do that. Go to my tweets. That's all I'm interested in. Go to my tweets. The new Twitter layout bothers me more than the new Twitter CSS does. Delete tweet. Hey at JR Hunt, who is this celebrity? And it responded, that looks like a picture of Andy Jassy. And you guys are welcome to tweet at me and try this. Now, I'm gonna upload the template that we created to the repo. So we made this repo yesterday. Celebrity tweeter. We made this repo on the stream on Wednesday. And I'm gonna upload the CloudFormation template, and I'll upload a little README. I'll probably get around to that around 6 p.m. Los Angeles time today, just because I'm going to be without internet for a few hours. But that's the end of the stream today. If you have any last second questions, now's the time. Just, tell me in the next 20 seconds or so. Thanks a lot. Real short one today. On Monday, we are going to be, is Monday the 26th? On the 26th, we'll be streaming a really, really cool episode. I would strongly encourage you to check it out. We're going to be building a Twitter bot for a Slack channel, or sorry, a Lex bot for a Slack channel that lets you vote on new episodes. And so I'm going to have a guest. I'm going to have Helen Zhang from Slack, who will be kind of joining us and running us through the Slack API and how we can use it. And then we'll be going over, what are the best practices for provisioning and maintaining bots and all that other stuff. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night or day.